y'all doing? Hope you guys having a good day, good night, good evening, good afternoon, good morning, whatever time of day it is for you guys. I'm just gonna go over a quick little unawakened guide for her. I'm gonna show you how I personally grind an unawakening at places like Polyforest, and then afterwards I will try to show you some higher end grind as well. I kind of already did that in my last video, but this one's to be a little more specific. I'll spend more time showing the skills that I use and things of that nature. So I'm just going to go right into it. I'm not going to go into every single skill because I kind of already did that in the last video, but I will kind of show you what skills I use for grinding and how that kind of plays out and works out as well. So first things first is we're going to reset the skills and we'll just go through it. So this, for the auto attack, you don't necessarily need. I mean, if you kind of have extra skill points and you want it, sure. I never really use the auto attack too much anyways. I do level her sidestep up. I level her sidestep up to at least level 3, so it has a lower cooldown because she does have an attack speed buff. So if you, and at level 3 you get the attack speed buff for 10 seconds versus level 2 is 5-second attack speed buff. And again, lower cooldown means you can just use it for the attack speed buff. If you're trying to save on skill points. All right. Okay, so her sidestep, I usually level to level 3. You can level to level 4 if you want for extra damage. But I mean, if you're trying to save on skill points and you're not level 56, you probably can't. Level 3 gives you the shortest cooldown, and it also gives you the highest duration for your attack speed buff. So at level 2, it's a 10% attack speed for 5 seconds, while level 3, it's a 10% attack speed for 10 seconds. If you're trying to save on skill points, you don't need her knockback. You don't need the flow to her sidestep. So I'd say go ahead and skip it. And her siege buff, you obviously want. It's 20 AP for 30 seconds, 50% crit, 15% accuracy rate, 30% move speed, and 20% crit damage, all for 30 seconds. And you can actually use that in Unawakened. So I would definitely say get it. So as for her F skills, I pretty much don't actually take these for PvE. It doesn't, I don't believe the cooldown doesn't change at all. So her F skill using super armor and abound for PvP, you actually don't need to level it up to get that CC, and it's on the first hit anyways. So you don't need to level it up to get that CC or anything. So if you really want it, you can save skill points by not leveling these up. For down F, I rarely actually use it, but for a min-maxer, it is 5% down attack damage for 10 seconds. So it's up to you if you ever actually want to use it. And then we go to her axe throw. Her axe throw is pretty nice. It's a attack, cast, and move speed debuff. If you get it to level 3, it's 50%. If you do the absolute, it'll do some damage. Sometimes it can actually like kill a pack of mobs at Polyforest and like places you one shot. So I mean, I'm gonna go ahead and get it because I have the extra skill points. If you don't have skill points, you can leave it at level 3. You can even actually leave it at level 2 if you don't have skill points and you're just grinding at like if you're just doing PvE. You can leave it at level 2 and just use it for the flow, which is a 24% accuracy rate for 10 seconds. But the other really cool thing about the flow is that if you jump, you just keep forward momentum. You do a quick little, you can use the flow from a jump without using the axe throw, which kind of has a longish animation to it. So you can actually use it from a jump, which is pretty nice. Just for an extra little quick dash or small dash and Unawakening. Her spacebar skill gives you crit damage, so I definitely would recommend leveling it up as high as you can. It's forward guard, it's crit damage for 5 seconds or 5% for 10 seconds, and it's a forward guard, so it'll help you in PvE, especially if you're in higher end grind spots. So it's pretty nice. And then her down LMB, I went over this in my last video, but in high end grind spots, I do level this one up. I don't level up her down LMB RMB. The animation is kind of long. It does do high damage, but I normally just use this as a filler skill. I use her down LMB into her shift right mouse button flow because they're pretty high damage and they're protected. So when I'm at like Augment and stuff like that and my regular rotations on the cooldown, I'll use this and do her shift right mouse button for pretty solid damage as a filler skill and protected. But if you're just doing Polyforest and stuff like that, you don't need this just yet. So I'm not going to skill into it because for now we're just showing Polyforest and like the lower end grind spots. So her jump, basically each tier that you leveled it up gives her an extra jump. It's super armor and a bound on good hit. It doesn't do that good damage, but it does cover some pretty solid ground. So I mean, it's kind of up to you. If you're trying to save skill points, and again, you're just grinding at the for the first couple weeks of Unawakening, you don't necessarily need to level this up. In PvP, it could be seen as a pretty okay disengage. It's the safest disengage you have that covers a lot of ground, but it's super armor, so you can probably still get hit by ranged attacks. And I mean, depending on your gear, that could kill you with the time that you're jumping out away. So her shift LMB, this one's actually a really good skill. I definitely recommend leveling it up as much as you can. If you hold it, if you hold the charge, which is about 2.5 seconds to charge up, you get 20 AP for 10 seconds. You don't have to charge it up. It is a forward guard while charging and a knockdown on good hits. Okay, it is a forward guard while you're charging, and it has a knockdown on good hits. The really cool thing about this, it has a surprisingly long-ish range for AoE. It starts off with a cone of. It starts off as a forward cone in front of you, but after the cone, you actually have like a line of, basically a line attack right after. So it has like this forward where my mouse is, a forward cone around right here, and then right after it has a line that goes a little bit further up to about right here with a knockdown. If it hits it, it's a knockdown. You don't have to charge it as well. If you link almost any skill from Unawakening into it, it'll just quickly use it, as you see there. If you do want the charge and you're PvEing, you could always just put it on your hotbar, right? So whenever you're linking whatever skills, just push it from the hotbar and hold LMB, so you get the charge. Okay, so moving on to her shield skills. I wouldn't really recommend leveling these up. I personally don't like them. I mean, they're nice for like protected and potential like CC. If you're holding block and you press right mouse button, that entire animation is forward guard. But I mean, it's kind of long animation and it's pretty easy to get around. The third hit is a knockback, so I mean, it's up to you. Our forward F, I definitely would recommend getting. It's basically her dash. It's a forward guard dash, and if you can see, she covers quite a good amount of distance with that. You just have to be careful because it is just forward guard. So be cautious with that, but it's pretty nice. And if you do, it gives you 10% move speed for 10 seconds, and you can actually link a few things into that. I'll go over that afterwards. So her forward step or her forward dash in Unawakening actually is it's just like a small quick dash. It is a stiffness on good hits, and it's forward guard. So you could potentially find openings to use this. Also, if you hit somebody with it, it's minus 20 DP for 10 seconds. Her forward F is also minus 20 DP for 10 seconds. So like you can find some decent ways to use it. In PvE, I still level this all the way up to lower the cooldown, and gives me an extra quick little forward step to try to keep forward momentum. Her grab, you don't need in PvE, but I mean, you obviously will need it in PvP, so even though I'm just doing a basic PvE build, I'd probably still level this up, just so you have it. The higher level it is, the more accuracy you get. It's a super armor while you're using this skill and knockdown. You can cancel the grab animation if you press right mouse button. I believe people say that it's bound when you do that though, so keep that in mind. Her right mouse button, I just lock it. I don't really like it. It just does nothing for me. That's me personally. I guess some people may want it. I don't know. Okay, so her shift F. Her shift F again is another skill that has surprisingly long range and high AoE and pretty high damage in my opinion. I use it in pretty much my regular PvE rotation sometimes, and my actual like high-end PvE rotation. It also minus 20 DP for 10 seconds. And my PvP combo, I also use this as well. It's just a really nice skill overall. I'll go ahead and show you her range on it. It's very high AoE. So even in large-scale PvP, you can probably use this from a good distance and still get some people with it. It's really nice. It doesn't have CC in a PvP, so keep that in mind, but it's still pretty solid. Her forward right mouse button is a forward momentum skill. It's super armor. It's a bound and good hit on PvE. You can get a knockdown chance for PvP on your skill add-ons. I've used it a few times. The really nice thing about this is it does pretty solid damage, pretty high AoE, and it's also got a minus 20 AP for 10 seconds. So I would recommend this in PvE and PvP in literally all areas of the game. Her shift Q is another skill that does really solid damage. It's also a good way to get your HP back. You get a ton of HP back and lowers the player's evasion rate for 15% for 10 seconds, players and mobs. So it's also good in high-end grind spots. And low-end grind spots, I still use it. The flow, if you hold Q, it does the damage of your shift Q times 4. And its HP recovery is 50 on good hits. So I would definitely recommend it. Or forward Q, you can use it as a forward momentum skill. But the only thing is, like, it has a longer animation, like recovery animation time, so you got to keep that in mind. I still level it up when I'm grinding and stuff, because sometimes a lot of your stuff is on cooldown, and you want to get to the next pack as soon as you can, so sometimes you just use this. And again, you can hold Q after your shift Q or forward Q to get the flow off, which is pretty cool. Her down right mouse button and her shift right mouse button, these skills I normally don't use in small scale and like in the PvE like this, like Polyforce and Nog and stuff. I rarely ever use those. It's up to you. Sometimes I will, like if I just want to like if I'm lazy and I want to hit a pack that's like kind of out the way, I'll use her shift right mouse button because it has a further range. So I'm just gonna level these up just because, you know, and high end grind spots I'll use it as well. So now we'll just like level her passive. Her passive is crit damage. It's 0.5% crit damage per level, every other level. Starting and it finishes off at level 50, I believe. But then once you're level 63, you get another 1.5%. So you get a total at level 50, you'll have a total of I believe it's, let's see, 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 19, 20. So it's 10% crit damage at level 50. And then if you get level 63, it's another 1.5, so 11.5% crit damage. And then her regular, I mean, this is, you already know this passive. Yo, okay, so we're gonna go over really quick. I just realized in the video I didn't actually go over the passive, like the big good passive right here. So I'm gonna go ahead and go over it now. So this is called Dragon's Mission or Dragon's Quest or Omewa's something. I don't know what they're actually gonna call it on NAEU, but it's pretty awesome. So it's got 3 different parts to it. And basically, every time you do damage with the skill that's not on cooldown, it procs the passive. So the first part is a buff to yourself where you get 5% crit chance for 20 seconds. The second part is that every time you do damage to somebody, it does 10 seconds of all speed debuffs for 20%. So basically, when you do damage with a skill, the person that gets hit loses 20% attack, cast, and move speed for 10 seconds. And you get 5% crit chance for 10 seconds or 20 seconds. Now, there's a third part about it. Every time you do damage with a skill that's not on cooldown, if you land a crit, then that crit chance buff that you get stacks up to 10 times. So if you can keep this up, you're basically keeping up a 50% crit chance for 20 seconds. And any skill that does damage, if it's not on cooldown, will refresh the passive, so you can keep that up at like literally the entire time. So it's actually a pretty solid passive. It's really strong. Skills on cooldown, so if you're spamming a skill, it won't proc the passive until it goes off cooldown, so keep that in mind. Now the other part about it too, the other really cool part about it that, in my opinion, I think kind of helps with classes, if you're trying to go tanky on her, this might help with sustain. And PvE in general, it helps with sustain. If you do any skill that you have one hand on your axe or halberd, so for example, your forward Q, where she has one hand on her axe, then you will get 100 HP back if you do damage with that skill. Now, if you do a skill like your shift Q or your forward right mouse button, where she has 2 hands on her axe, you'll get 200 HP back if you do damage. Again, this is only on skills that aren't on cooldown, so keep that in mind. But yeah, so she gets a pretty solid amount of HP back just with all her skills as well. And that is Dragon's Mission or Dragon's Quest or Omewa's something, whatever they call it on NAEU. And so that's basically it. For in terms of my PvE rotation when I'm one-shotting mobs kind of stuff, I kind of just rotate a few different skills depending on what's on and off cooldown. It's normally her forward F, her forward right mouse button, her shift left mouse button, and a few others. I'm just gonna do a quick rotation around this polyforest so I can kind of show you guys how it goes, and you guys can see. I will lower her AP a bit. I think 230, 244 is good. So let's just go.